So the Knuckles show came out last Friday, and I decided to watch it. It's conflicting, to say the least. I know a lot of people online have been saying that the show is bad, and that it focuses too much on another character that isn't Knuckles. And so, I took that information going in, and I assumed they were just overreacting, because people on the internet tend to do that all the time. And no, they were right. The show isn't as good as we thought it was going to be, or as good as we wanted it to be, let's say. I mean, the show's still good. It's not bad, but it was definitely disappointing. So, the show focuses on Knuckles, obviously, and how he's adjusting to Earth. And so, the first episode is basically Knuckles trying too hard to adjust to Earth. Like, he's created this whole obstacle course for himself that he uses to train in, and he turns the house that Sonic lives in into like a little battle arena. And that results in Maddie, I think, grounding him. And while he's in his room, he gets this vision of Pachanamak, the Knuckles tribe leader from Sonic Adventure 1. And he basically tells him that he basically needs to find something to do. And he gives him this idea of finding an apprentice for him to train on this world. And so Knuckles goes off and find his little apprentice. And that's when we're introduced to this character of Wade Whipple, and that's when, and I mean, Wade isn't a bad character, but like the show later on focuses way too much on Wade himself, like especially episode 4 where Knuckles only makes an appearance at the very beginning and at the very end of the episode. Throughout the whole rest of the episode, he's just not there. Which really sucks for a show called Knuckles, that the main character Knuckles isn't in it that much. I am assuming they did that for marketing reasons, because I have a feeling the show probably wasn't called Knuckles during development because of this reason alone. Like, they wanted to call it something else and have Wade's name in the title, but someone else at Paramount was like, no, we should name it Knuckles because we'll get more money that way, we'll get more subscriptions, people will buy it, people will watch it. And so then they had the name changed to Knuckles and put Knuckles in the forefront of most of the advertising for this show. And well, here we are with this show. Now, like episodes 2 and 3 aren't that bad, honestly. Episode 2 starts with, I think, Knuckles getting captured, and like Wade having to go save him, having to save him after the gun agents captured him, which I forgot to mention earlier. Yeah, the gun agents in the show, they're pretty interesting characters. I like all the technology they use to like emulate Knuckles' power, and like and there's this guy we saw in the trailer who hired the gun agents to capture Knuckles for him. After like his whole story is that I think he was fired from gun after Robotnik went crazy and tried to capture Sonic, and so they tried to cut ties with Eggman entirely, and that's what resulted in that guy getting fired and wanting revenge. Although he really should be after Sonic, not Knuckles, but yeah. That's more of a nitpick in my opinion. But yeah, the gun agents capture Knuckles, and that leaves Wade having to save him with this whole like fantasy sequence that he thinks is gonna happen. Of course, that never actually happens. He goes poorly, like really poorly for him. Like, it starts with him like bashing the 2 gloves those gun agents had, and it like explodes. It like creates a huge blast of energy, which blows up the fireworks he was planning to have like a big finale at the end, and like. It just blows up entirely in his face, quite literally. And so after that whole incident, Wade becomes a wanted man, and so he has to like move back in with his parents. And so the guy who was after Knuckles originally comes in and busts into his house with his parents, and then they have this whole fight scene and everything that results in his parents' house getting destroyed partially. And then episode 4 begins with a bounty hunter trying to capture Wade. It was his old bowling buddy from earlier in the show. In episode 1, we see his bowling buddy leave him because he's just so bad at bowling. But in episode 4, he hears about his bounty, and so he tries to capture Wade. He puts him in his cage, and then he gets knocked out. And then he meets Pachanamak in his little fantasy sequence, I guess, and where he learns how Knuckles is like, he learns part of Knuckles' backstory, and this part is really interesting. They reference Sonic 06 of all games. I think that's the first time any official Sonic media has actually referenced Sonic 06 in a way that wasn't a meme. So, yeah, that's pretty fun. In this universe, it turns out that Iblis wasn't connected to Earth at all, but instead was connected to was on another planet, and then Knuckles ended up getting defeated. But then after training for a while, he managed to defeat Iblis, and that's how and that's how Wade manages to escape his cape. And then he just completely embarrasses his old bowling buddy, and then we never see him again. So yeah, and then we see Knuckles again at the end of the episode. Again, not too much Knuckles in that episode. Too much focus on Wade. And then in episode 5, they arrive in Reno, Nevada for the bowling championship, which I forgot to mention. Wade is trying to become like a bowling champion. He's doing this in order to meet his dad, which abandoned him and his family years ago to become a bowling champion. So yeah, that's what they're heading to Reno, Nevada for. Sort of this whole bowling champion storyline, which is like a metaphor for like a battleground of some sort. Like Knuckles is trying to prepare. Like Knuckles thinks he's preparing his apprentice for like a battle, and so he's looking for his battleground, and so this is where he fights his quote big battle unquote in the bowling tournament versus his dad. So most of episode 6 is focused on him beating his dad in the bowling tournament. Like, and that's one of the big issues with this show. Like, that feels like a scene out of a completely different show that isn't related to Sonic or Knuckles in the slightest. Like, there were so many missed opportunities in this show that they could have taken. Like, for example, with Pachanamak, he only appears twice in the whole show. Like, you could have had Pachanamak acting as like Knuckles' spirit guide or something, or his consciousness that tells him what to do and what not to do on Earth as like a new resident on Earth. Like, you could even replace Pachanamak with Sonic and Tails and have them guide Knuckles around, since they've been on Earth longer than him. Like, there is so many different ways you could have taken this show and just not focus it so much on Wade. Heck, you could have even kept Wade and done it the exact same way, just put Knuckles in it more. Like, that's the big issue everyone has with the show, including me, is that it focuses too much on Wade, the character that barely was in any of the trailers and advertisements, and not too much on Knuckles, the name of the show, and the guy who had the most focus on it in the trailer. Like, why I don't understand what made them think it was such a good idea to focus the show so much on Wade. Like, did they really think a show about like a superpowered echidna wouldn't do well? Like, I mean, maybe they did think that, but maybe they thought it was too expensive. Like, we have to remember, this show probably did not have as big of a budget as the movies do. So maybe they didn't want to spend all this time animating because they didn't have the budget to. So that's why the focus is on Wade. Well, in that case, you didn't have to make the episodes 30 minutes long. Like, some of these episodes are super long for a 6-episode series. Like, realistically, you could just stitch all of these episodes together into like 1 2-hour long movie. In fact, that's what this should have been, the Knuckles movie. Like a shorter movie, like on the lower budget side. That would have made a much more sense here than making a 6-episode show and focusing most on that human character that no one cares about. And here's the thing, Wade isn't even a bad character. I actually like Wade, what we saw in the show. Is that we just got too much of him, I guess. It suffers from what I like to call Cars 2 syndrome, where you take a comic relief character and make him the focal point of the show. Like issues that Cars 2, for example, has, or the Cleveland show, or the Patrick show. Like, all those characters take a comic relief character and make him the center focus of the show. And that kind of defeats the whole point of a comic relief character. It's in the name. It's supposed to be comedic relief from the plot. If you make a comic relief character that focuses on the plot, then they're no longer comic relief. They're just annoying, I guess. And and the Minions movie fits under this too. Like, a lot of people don't like that movie because it takes the comic relief Minions character and makes them the entire movie. And a lot of people don't like the Minions to begin with, so that's where a lot of the Minions hatred came from. But yeah, we're off topic, but yeah. And that's in the Knuckles show, so that's why. I'm sure that's one reason why a lot of people hate the show too, is because Wade is supposed to be the comic relief character. Oh, Knuckles is supposed to be like the main character. But in this show, it's all swapped. Knuckles is like the comic relief character, and then Wade is the main focus. I understand, like, Wade is the main character of the show because, like, it focuses on him and Knuckles building a relationship like a master and apprentice relationship. It's similar to Po and Shifu from the Kung Fu Panda franchise. Like, I guess they wanted that from this show, but they executed it so badly. Like, if you wanted Wade to be an apprentice character, then they put Knuckles more in the show. I can't state that fact enough. If you want a master and apprentice relationship, you can't have the master be absent for most of the show. And here's the thing, like, Knuckles isn't even absent for most of this show. He's actually in a decent amount. In fact, the worst of it would probably be episode 4, like I said before, where he's only at the very beginning and the very end. Episodes 5 and 6 are pretty decent when it comes to Knuckles. When it comes to Knuckles appearances, just wish he had more to do. Like, Knuckles really doesn't have that much to do until, like, the final episode where he takes down the main bad guy. And let's focus on that too. Like, the main bad guy is barely in the show either. Like, the guy that's supposed to be the main villain of the show, he doesn't appear that much in the episodes. He just appears like once in, I think, episode 3 or 4, I can't remember. But I know he only appears once in one episode and then a couple times throughout the rest of the show, and then at the end of the, and then at the very end of episode 6, where it's pretty much just a repeat of the final battle of Sonic 1, the movie. Where it's like Sonic versus Eggman, he uses his power and like destroys Eggman, kicks him into the mushroom dimension. It's not an exact repeat of the Sonic 1 ending, but it's a very similar one. In fact, in this final battle, we see Knuckles get incapacitated for a couple minutes, and Wade has to come in and save the day. Like, I guess this is supposed to be like the apprentice becomes the master type moment for Wade, but it feels like it feels like a different show almost. Like, it feels like the show has been solely about Wade up until this point, that Knuckles is literally just on the ground dead. Well, not dead, incapacitated. And so, it doesn't feel like this was his moment. I mean, surely we've been building this up for the whole show, but like, I don't know, maybe we should have had Knuckles and Wade interact more on screen. Like I know I'm just like saying the same thing over and over again, but that is really the biggest problem of this show. Wade has too much screen time, and Knuckles doesn't have enough screen time, and that sucks. And I really think the show could have been good. Like, for example, those pitches I made earlier, like with Sonic and Tails guiding Knuckles, or Pachanamek potentially guiding Knuckles. I don't know why they decided to go with this direction, other than marketing and like budget reasons, I guess. But yeah, those are mostly my thoughts on the Knuckles show. Hopefully the show gets a season 2 with like an actual focus on Knuckles, and maybe we get actual more Knuckles in the Knuckles show, and maybe Wade becomes a side character for a while, like he should have been. And I think the director of the movie said he wanted more spin-offs too, so maybe we can get like a Shadow show or like a Tails show. That would be pretty fun. I would like a Tails show. That would be pretty interesting. But yeah, even with all those complaints I've just said, I do think the hate for the show is a bit overblown. I don't think the show deserves to be like one of the worst shows ever, or like you should skip it, because I mean, frankly, you could skip it, but like it's supplemental content. Like, I don't think it's required to understand Sonic 3. I don't think Sonic 3 is gonna take much from the show, but yeah, you shouldn't skip it if you really want to watch it. Don't let the people on the internet decide your opinion for you. Like, watch the show yourself and think for yourself, and like figure out if the show is right for you. Like, it was for me. Like, I would actually go back and watch the show, just not in the recent future. But yeah, I would go back and watch the show like after a couple months, maybe even a year or so, and maybe we get season 2 that focuses more on Knuckles. But another thing I don't really like with the fan reaction to this, I think a lot of fans have like too big expectations for this show. Like, they expected characters like the Chaotix to show up, like Shadow is gonna be in this, or like Sonic and Tails are gonna have a bigger focus in a show called Knuckles, which just doesn't make sense. And like, I think fans had too much expectations for the show, for a show that's only 6 episodes long, and for a show that probably isn't gonna get a second season at all in the near future. And yeah, I think the fan reaction was a bit overblown. Like, it's not the worst show ever, like a lot of people are saying. I don't think Wade appears enough to be called for the show just to be called the Wade show. I do think Knuckles has a big enough role for the show to be titled Knuckles, even if most of it focuses on Wade. like a lot of the issues from the show just comes from the fact that they just executed this whole master and apprentice theme wrong. Like they focused way too much on the apprentice and not enough on the master. Yeah. Those are my thoughts on the Knuckles show. Tell me your thoughts in the comments below, and goodbye.